Hi, welcome back to the Space News Leading Women series. I'm Debra Werner, Silicon Valley correspondent for Space News, and I have the pleasure of speaking today with Dr. Claire Leon, Director of the Space Systems Command, Space Systems Integration Office. Hello, Claire.
Hi.
Do you prefer to be called Dr. Leon?
No.
Okay. So, can you tell us what the Space Systems Integration Office does?
So, in a nutshell, we talk about trying to integrate actually integrate all of space. And so it's not just integrating SSC programs, but for end-to-end capabilities, we need to work with many of our mission partner systems. And so we're working with the NRO, MDA, SDA to create integrated capabilities. And then in addition, we're trying to create very resilient systems for the future. And so we're trying to integrate allies, that adds resilience, and we're trying to integrate commercial. And we're also looking for new solutions that are different than maybe what we've done before. So it's, again, in a nutshell, it's integrating all of US space. I have a graphic that kind of describes a huge transition that space is going through. So I grew up building satellites for Hughes, and then we were acquired by Boeing. And the satellites that we built, we would call, we thought of as high value assets, right? So a technical term. But we never thought of them as being vulnerable at all. We thought space is the high ground, the final frontier. We didn't think anything would happen other than, based on the reliability of the satellites that we were building. But the threat environment has changed. So we're very concerned about our adversaries potentially negating our space capabilities. So we analyze the threat environment, and then we're trying to shape the systems of the future. So high value assets we know have some risks today. At an unclassified level, we can talk about direct ascent ASATs. We're concerned about our adversaries possibly launching something and taking out one of our satellites. It could be in low Earth orbit, it could be a geosynchronous orbit. So we're trying to pivot the architecture from having a small number of high value assets that take a long time to build to inherently resilient by design. And so there's many different things that create resilience. One is proliferation. So when you have a large number of satellites that are, maybe smaller, low Earth orbit, if you lose one satellite, you don't lose much capability. If we use the OPIR system as an example, today there's like 5 or 6 SBIRS satellites. If you lose one, particularly over a certain region, you lose tremendous capability. If you have a proliferated system where you have 100 satellites or 200 satellites, if you lose one, and it's not a very expensive satellite, then you lose a very small percent of capability. So one of the things my office is trying to do is to help facilitate this pivot strategy. So moving from high value assets to this proliferated architecture where we're, again, resilient by design. So again, but working again with mission partners and creating integrated capabilities. It's such a different time for space. Again, we used to design systems that were standalone, and today we're building capabilities, not just systems, but end-to-end effects, where we might be using MDA sensors, partnering with the NRO for some of their capabilities, using our own capabilities, working with the Navy, the air side, but looking at all of those interfaces and making sure we can pull the threads and that everything works together. So it's probably a pretty complicated answer, but that's what we spend a lot of time doing.
Well, and it's a complicated problem that you're addressing.
Right. So I actually view it as a very interesting time because of the newness of the organization. So Space Force is about 4 years old. Space Systems Command is about 2 years old. My organization's about 2 years old. So we're again, working, creating new processes, creating the ways we work together. So we have, a need to pivot the architecture, but we have a need to integrate all of the capabilities from different organizations. I think we used to be able to operate in very stovepipe ways, and now it's very important for us to understand, what can the Intel community bring to to the overall space capability. What does air bring? What does space bring? But we're working in a much, much more integrated fashion. So the level of cooperation I'm seeing across mission partner organizations is just unprecedented.
Great. I understand you also chair the Enterprise Resilience Board. What is that and why was it established?
So because of the concern about contested space environment, there's a need to protect the assets that we already have in space and then to plan the future to be inherently resilient by design. So we have a team. It's actually co-chaired. I actually don't chair it, but we have a colonel in my office and a colonel in another organization that's responsible for building what we call kind of the space control hardware. So we partner that board, and we call it the Enterprise Resilience Forum. And we bring together, again, a few folks from my team, a few folks from Colonel McLean's team, and then the other program executive officers across SSC. They send their teams as well so that we can have, so we don't reinvent the wheel. So from protecting assets in space, we have a few tools we want to implement consistently across programs. And then we have strategies for future programs. So for example, the Evolved Strategic SATCOM program was just getting ready to put out a request for proposal. I think it's actually out on the street now. And so built into their proposal were a few strategies or requirements. So they were trying to study, or we were partnered in studying, what protective measures should they put on their spacecraft? What should they count on? How can they be more resilient by design? And so then we have kind of subject matter experts on what does it mean to be resilient? And it really depends on the program and the system. If you have a proliferated system, you might not put on very many onboard measures. If you have a few high value assets, you're going to want to know, have more capability on board or off board. So we have the forum so that we're not reinventing the wheel, and we can share the study that we did for ESS with the next program, like protected tactical SATCOM. So we can then, do lessons learned and share across programs.
Oh, I see. We're in a time of rapid technological change. What opportunities and challenges does that present for the Space Systems Command or the Space Force more generally?
Well, so you're absolutely correct. It's a time of great change, with many startup companies creating new space capabilities. There's a high interest in dynamic space operations. So a lot of the new companies are bringing capabilities that we hadn't really planned on. So it allows us to, again, look at where we are today, look at different solutions for where we should be in the future, and hopefully inject new technology. But for us, it really is all about having robust space systems, being able to operate in an agile way, and not having the traditional, what we would call the era of exquisite satellites, where satellites were really expensive and they take 10 years to build. We're trying to flip and, again, create resilient capability, but actually operate on a much faster pace. So instead of a 10-year time from the time you put a proposal out to the time you launch, maybe it's 2 to 3 years. And we've seen great successes with Space Development Agency, and we have a MEO, missile warning, missile track capability that, again, trying to work on that 2 to 3 year timeline, trying not to get things perfect the first time, but get capability on orbit, and then be able to come back with the next tranche or the next group of satellites with additional capability. So really being able to operate on a much faster timescale. So it's a really an exciting time. It's really a completely different framework than, again, what I grew up with when I was building satellites in my early career.
Yes. Um, I've also seen you discuss acquisition reform on panels. Is that part of this whole picture of moving from the exquisite satellites to a more nimble architecture?
Absolutely. And I think we're trying to use the tools that are available for us. So we're not trying to say we need to go change acquisition policy. There are tools like there's other transaction agreements. So I was working for Air Force a few years ago with the launch enterprise, and we would put out the we called it the RPS, or Rocket Propulsion System Other Transaction Agreements. So other transaction agreements are one tool and allows you to very quickly get contractors on contract to prototype. And then we were able to do some prototyping with various companies, very quickly, and then use that information and judge how various contractors were doing to then, when we put out a more traditional RFP, turn that into like the whole phase two acquisition strategy. So we were using then a mix of both other transaction agreements and then the standard, FAR clauses and whatnot. So that was a few years ago. So these tools are available to us. So there are ways just to, with the like the medium, the MTAs, medium transaction authorities. Again, we don't have to use the traditional, the what is it, the DoD 5000. We can again, use more agile contracting processes and get more capability on orbit faster that way.
And I understand you're also, or SSC is also moving toward program executive officers owning their mission areas rather than buying assets. What is the goal there, and are you making progress?
I think we're making progress, but it's really a mindset change. We're trying not to just buy hardware. We're trying to deliver effects, right? So it's not about, you know, having the biggest program, or, again, 10-year acquisition timelines or 2-year acquisition timelines. But when we think about what we're acquiring, it's not just acquiring a spacecraft, getting it on orbit, but it's what is the end result? Who is the user? How is the combatant command going to use that capability? How are we going to test and train that system? But so really thinking about that end-to-end thread, not just I built the WGS satellite, I got it on orbit, I turned it over, and somebody else is operating it, but really thinking about the user. So if we need agile command and control, that's built in from the beginning, so we know how it's going to be used, and that we design that whole thread in from the beginning.
So now let's turn to your career. After decades working for Hughes Space and Communications and then Boeing, which acquired that business, you went to work for the US Air Force and now the US Space Force. What prompted that move to government service?
So I was eligible to retire, and so I was 55 at the time, so that was when I became retirement eligible. And you kind of take a stock of your career and say, okay, what's next? And I kind of felt like if I was going to do anything different, that then now is the time, because if you wait another 5 years, then you're 5 years older, and how much runway do you have on the other side? So I was really trying to make a very conscious decision about, do I stay in industry? Do I try to, move further up the corporate ladder, or do I go do something different? So I actually almost refer to my current phase as my millennial phase, because I left Boeing, as a vice president, applied to a senior executive service position. So it's kind of a minimum of a 3-year contract. And so I worked for Air Force doing acquisition. One of the things I tell people is that I really thought I knew what working for the government was going to be like, but you don't really know what it's like to work for the government until you work for the government. And as a contractor, you're really focused on delivering hardware, delivering capability to your customer. And I was a super proud contractor. But on the government side, it's really thinking about this strategy of how the government should acquire the next set of capabilities. And there's a whole acquisition process. So particularly in launch, you're buying billions of dollars worth of stuff. So you have to be acquisition certified and meet certain criteria and all that to be considered qualified to be running a program office for the government. But partway through my tenure, I was approached by Loyola Marymount to come be their graduate systems engineering program director. And it was something I felt like I couldn't turn down because the whole reason I got my PhD was to set myself up to retire, teach, and consult. And so when they made me an offer, I said, but I've got a 3-year contract minimum, and it's not for another year and a half. So Loyola Marymount said, well, we'll wait for you. So it's like, okay. So I worked with the senior leadership at it was SMC at the time, and we figured out who would replace me. And he was thrilled to take over the job, and I was thrilled that he could take over the job because it's always nice to leave your organization in really capable hands. And so I went off to work in academia for 3 years. And it wasn't like I intended to leave after 3 years, but I found that I wanted to do some consulting. And so when I started to do some consulting, I was consulting back into SSC, and it just became so obvious that it was a pivotal time in space, right? Space Force was new, SSC was new, leadership was needed, and I felt like I could contribute. So when they posted the position that I now have, it was for a highly qualified expert. So it's a kind of funny job title of HQE, but it's a 3-year job, which can be extended to kind of get an organization over a hump. So the Space Systems Integration Office, it's really brand new. And so I've spent the last couple of years really strategizing what is the Space Systems Integration Office, what are our priorities, what should we be focused on. But it's really about creating this huge pivot from, again, that era of exquisite systems, responding to the threat, and then creating this future, very resilient capability. But it's really working that end-to-end capability, and it takes a lot of work. And there's engineering processes and configuration control boards and all sorts of things. So I've been here for 2 years. I'm thrilled to be here. Every day I learn something. That's one of my goals in life is to keep learning and being challenged. So I think I'm kind of in the right spot at the right time.
Great. Your educational background is varied. You earned a bachelor's in mechanical engineering from George Washington, a master's in business administration from the University of California, Los Angeles, and a PhD in executive management from Claremont Graduate University. Did those degrees prepare you well for your career?
So I think education's a process, right? So I actually had one more master's in there too. So actually, early in my career, I got a master's of management, and I actually think that was pivotal because I was really young, and I was then taking these classes in management theory, and it made me think about not just me as a 22-year-old, but what is a management perspective? And I think so very early career, I was getting some training and thinking differently about how you run organizations. So I think that was helpful. I got an MBA from UCLA. I call that like your management toolkit of, accounting and strategy and marketing. And it's like, check, check, check. I understand that stuff. And I think that helps you in your day-to-day. But whether any of the degrees, I think what was valuable is having some time to be in a classroom setting, to read different things, to learn different things, and then be able to go back to your day job and apply it. And so I think it just made me a stronger engineer and a stronger leader. And then education is also the right thing at the right time. So when I got my PhD, I was taking some class on like leadership in the making of meaning. And it was really heartfelt. And I think it really changed me as a manager and a leader. So I just really appreciated, some of the specific classes that give you nuggets that you can take back to your workforce.
Right. Do you have any advice for people entering the field who may not be white male engineers, which is what a lot of people imagine would work for the space sector?
Well, I think you have to love what you do. So I think the people, hopefully the people that get attracted to working in space are jazzed about creating, working on technology and working on capabilities that end up being launched and provide capability to the nation. And it doesn't necessarily matter if it's commercial capability or government programs. You can contribute in any capacity. But just philosophically, early career, I'm a big believer in getting strong technical skills. I started in propulsion. I then went to system test. System test is where you build the satellites, you kind of build them up a little bit, test, build a little more, test, do thermal vacuum and whatnot. So I called it my cable dragging days, where you plug things in, boot up computers, test all facets of the satellite. Gave me really good knowledge of how satellite systems are supposed to work, because you simulate a lot of that in test. But um, but again, early career, I just think it's really important to build those technical skills and then get a variety of different experiences. So I've always had kind of a 2 to 3 year clock, that where after working on one job for 2 or 3 years, I'm really ready to do something different, even in my later career millennial phase. And I think it keeps you fresh and it keeps you growing. So you kind of try to both enhance diversity of technical skills and then move into, if you want to move up, then you've got to work on your 360 skills, right? So if you're a team lead, how do you treat your team? How do you work with your peers? How do you keep your bosses informed and not surprised? So there's just lots of different things to think about.
Got it. Great. You've answered my questions. Is there anything else that you'd like to say?
Well, again, it's just to me, very interesting time in space in general, and particularly for Space Force, really trying to pivot from the traditional systems to the future systems, and really, it's important for our nation to have robust capabilities, whether it's GPS with position navigation and timing, or our warning system. It's just so important for the safety of our nation, for all of these systems to be working effectively. So I would just invite our future, high school, college kids to think about supporting space in any capacity, working for contractors, working for the government directly. They're all, interesting possibilities, but I just invite you to come help build the Space Force of the future.
Great. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, my pleasure.